Thanking Him for another opportunity to get it right, another opportunity to prove ourselves worthy. Just want to wish the nation happy Shabbat Shalom, happy new moon, and feast of dedication. Today's class topic is being obedient unto death. Being obedient unto death. As we self-examine, look inwardly. Here's where we must acknowledge there's only 4 things that's really truly set before us. Only 4 things that's truly set before us. Life and death.
That's right.
And good and evil.
Right.
Only 4 things that's truly set before us. Life and death and good and evil. Give me that Sirach 37:18. Ecclesiastes chapter 37 verse 18.
The book of Sirach, chapter 37 and verse 18. For manner of things appear, good and evil, life and death.
For manner of things appear, good and evil, and life and death. Sit back and examine it. Get the heart to know it, to understand it. It's been a very eventful week. Very eventful week. But I want to share a story. Throw the word death around a lot. But actually had a close encounter with death here previously. Baby girl, she was eating some Doritos. And she had begun to choke. All praise to the Most High that I was there.
That's right.
And able to unleash that. My baby's girl good. My baby girl is good, but death. How fast did it could come? If I wouldn't know what would have happened. And I just seen, it made me understand it. Death would come by just one simple mistake.
That's right.
In a split second. And that death is just truly everywhere around. Truly everywhere around. And it just made me cringe. Try holding your breath. And describe that pain when you can't get it air.
That's right.
Describe that pain. Truly the flesh profiteth nothing. For truly the flesh will fail us. Because as the ashes come, and as the ashes, the flesh will return.
That's right.
But it's one that understood this. Give me Philippians chapter 2 verse 7. But there was one amongst us that understood this. Philippians chapter 2 verse 7.
The book of Philippians chapter 2 and verse 7. But made himself of no reputation, and look upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of man.
Read.
And being found in fashion.
But being found in fashion, read.
As a man.
It's Christ. Being found in fashion, read. As a what?
As a man.
Understanding that he's in fashion as a man. Breathing the same common air as man. Understanding the air of the flesh, read.
He humbled himself.
He did what?
He humbled himself.
He did what?
He humbled himself.
He humbled himself.
That's right.
He humbled himself. Read.
And became obedient unto death.
He did what?
And became obedient unto death.
Unto death. Understanding that the flesh was to perish.
That's right.
He became obedient. Understanding he had a struggle but a short time, he became obedient. Obedient unto death. Obedient. But again, some of us consider not. Some of us fail to consider our end. And when we fail to consider, we walk and we err in our walk. Give me a second, Ezra chapter 9, verse 11. Second Esdras, chapter 9, verse 11.
The book of Second Esdras, chapter 9 and verse 11. And they had loved my law, while they had yet liberty, and when as yet place of repentance was open unto them, understood not, but despised.
They did what?
But
Some
despised.
of us operate in this flesh. We fail to understand. We fail to hearken into the bigger picture. They that had lost my law while they had yet liberty. You know, one thing about the human nature is that we are evil by default.
That's right. Bring it out.
By default. The flesh truly profits nothing. The understanding of the flesh truly profits nothing. And that we truly need the Spirit of God. And Christ understood that, and he lived by code. Let's get on that cross. But read on not.
The same must know it. After death by pain.
After death by what?
After death by pain.
Try holding your breath. Put a lighter to your hand. And try to explain that agony that you feel. That mind-boggling pain. Undescribable pain. That should be enough to humble a man.
That's right.
It should be enough to humble a man. Let me tell Israel, don't consider that we are going to be squirming like a fish for air one day.
That's right.
So how out you walk in this short time we got? Israel's time to get on that cross. It's truly time to get on that cross. Go back to Philippians chapter 2, verse 7.
The book of Philippians, chapter 2 and verse 7. But made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant.
But made himself of no reputation, but took upon him the form of a servant. Read.
And was made in the likeness of man.
Read.
And being found in fashion as a man.
Read.
He humbled himself.
Israel, you better humble yourself.
That's right.
Because this flesh profiteth us nothing.
Right.
But worms. Flesh profits nothing but worms and maggots. Read on.
And became obedient unto death.
And did what?
And became obedient unto death.
Read.
Even the death of the cross.
The death of the cross. You got time to crucify this flesh. You know. Understand that the flesh profits nothing. That is vain by default. It's a certain code that we live by.
That's right.
A certain way that we move. A certain way that we walk. A certain way that we talk. Remaining obedient unto death. Remaining obedient. Give me Sirach chapter 7, verse 17.
The book of Sirach, chapter 7 and verse 17. Humble thy soul greatly.
Do what?
Humble thy soul greatly.
Read.
For the vengeance of the ungodly is fire and
The
worms.
only thing that this flesh the profit of man is fire and worms.
That's right.
Only thing that this flesh has to offer us is fire and worms.
Bring it out.
So how us me to walk? How must we walk? How must we talk? Give me Sirach 3 and 18. Got to hearken on this flesh, man. Our problem is that we lean on our flesh, our own understanding. But we're going to get that today, man. The flesh is corrupt.
The book of Sirach, chapter 3 and verse 18.
Read it
out. The greater thou art, the more humble
The
thyself.
greater thou art, the more humble you should be. Just as Christ taking on a form of a servant, understanding that death could come in any time. And the only thing that this flesh profit us is fire and worms.
Right.
Fire and worms. Fire and worms. Fire and worms. Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 17. Read this out.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 10 and verse 17. For the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, a great, a mighty, and terrible, which regard no person.
Understand that our God is terrible, which regard no persons. That's what we must consider. Read on now.
Nor taketh reward. He doeth execute the judgment of the fatherless.
Give me Psalm 66 and 1. Psalm 66 and 1.
The book of Psalms, chapter 66 and verse 1. Make a joyful noise unto God, all ye land. Sing forth the honor of his name.
Read.
Make his praise glorious. Say unto God, how terrible art thou in thy work.
How terrible art thou in thy works. Walking around rash with our mouth knowing absolutely nothing. Read on up.
Through the greatness of thy power shall thy enemies submit themselves unto thee.
Read.
All the earth shall worship thee, and shall sing unto thee. They shall sing to thy name.
Read on.
Salah. Come and see the works of God.
Come and do what?
Come and see the works of God.
Humble yourself, Israel, and actually consider the work of the workmaster himself.
Find it out.
Read on.
He is terrible in his doing toward the children of men.
He is terrible in his doings toward the children of men. You know, sit back and truly understand the cycle of life. That just as many of us is born, just as many as us die.
That's right.
Understanding that truly this flesh profit nothing. And that in order to beat death, man, we must get on that cross.
That's right.
We must get on that cross. Give me Hebrews chapter 12 and 28. Hebrews chapter 12 verse 28.
The book of Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 28. Wherefore, we receiving a kingdom which cannot be moved, let us have grace, whereby we may serve God acceptably with reverence and godly fear.
Read.
For our God is a consuming fire.
Our God is a consuming fire. Our God is a consuming fire. Let's go back to Philippians chapter 2. Being obedient unto death. Obedient to what? The Spirit of God, because this flesh that we in profits nothing. Read this out. Philippians chapter 2. Start at verse 7. Start at verse 8.
The book of Philippians chapter 2 and verse 8. And being found in fashion as a man.
And being what?
Found in fashion as a man.
Read.
He humbled himself.
Being found in fashion of a man. We are in the fashion of a man. It's truly time for us to truly humble ourselves. Read.
And became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross.
Even the death of the what?
Even the death of the cross.
But how is this achieved? Look at verse 1.
Verse 1. If there be therefore any consolation in Christ, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any vows and mercy, fulfill ye my joy.
Fulfill the joy of our God. What is our sole purpose? What is it that a true Israelite is really searching for?
Bring it out.
What is it that we truly supposed to be searching for? How do we fulfill the joy of the power? Read verse 2 again.
Verse 2. Fulfill ye my joy.
How do we fulfill the joy of the highest?
Bring it out.
Read.
That ye be like-minded, having the same love.
All he asks us to do is have the same love. Read.
Being of one accord.
And being of one accord. Read on.
Of one mind.
Of one mind. Read.
Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory.
Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory. Read.
But in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves.
Read on.
Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. Let this mind be in you.
Let this mind be in us. Read.
Which was also in Christ.
This is the mind of Christ. Where's the debate? Where is the disconnect?
Bring it out.
Where do we go wrong? Because to fulfill the joy of the power, All he asked us to do is have the same love and be on one accord.
That's right.
And one mind.
That's right.
So the fruits of the Spirit is love, being on one mind. That lets you know that the nation of Israel, we are walking in the flesh.
Let's work it out.
Walking in the flesh.
That's right.
And let's tell you about that flesh. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 13, verse 1.
The book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 13 and verse 1. Surely vain are all men by nature.
Surely vain are all men by nature. The flesh is vain by nature. Let's get some fruits of the flesh. Let's be real. Everybody in that world, in general, the human nature. Human nature. It is human nature for everybody to want something somebody else got.
Work it out.
Be in somebody else's shoes. Being a glutton. Greed. It says, surely vain are all men by nature. I guess it ain't you.
Bring it up.
I guess nobody full of envy. The evil eye full of hate, jealousy. It says, for surely vain are all men by nature. Read.
Who are ignorant of God.
Who are what?
Who are ignorant of God.
So who came out vain by nature. Ignorant of God by nature. Truly the flesh profiteth nothing.
That's
but
right.
it's the spirit that quickeneth.
That's right.
Jump up to verse 2, verse 23. Chapter 2, verse 23. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 23.
The book Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 2 and verse 23. For God created man to be immortal.
God created man to be immortal. But read.
And made him to be an image of his own eternity.
Read.
Nevertheless, through envy of the devil, came death into the world.
Nevertheless, through envy of the devil, came death into the world. Nevertheless, through envy of the devil, came death. Give me the definition of envy. Read that out. Envy.
The definition of envy. A feeling of discounted or resentful longing or aroused by someone else's possessions, qualities, or love.
Read.
Desire to have a quality, possession, or other desirable attribute belonging to someone else.
Understand, and it says through envy, death came into the world. Through envy. It's in our nature to envy.
Bring it out.
It is in our nature to envy. Look around, man. We all want what somebody else has.
Right.
When you walk as the flesh, you also walk as Cain. Also walk as Cain. Give me Genesis chapter 4. You bear that cross a certain code that we live by. Genesis chapter 4. Start at verse 1.
The book of Genesis, chapter 4. And Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground, an offering unto the Lord. And Abel, he also brought of the firstling of his flocks, and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel, and to his offering.
Read.
But unto Cain, and to his offering, he had no respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance failed. And the Lord said unto Cain, Why art thou wroth? And why is the countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted?
In this human nature, the hate that's lodged deep within, the envy, the jealousy. If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? But what in human nature, what do we decide to do? What route do we choose to take? Read.
And if thou dost not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. And
So stop right there. But it said, if thou doest well, shalt thou also be accepted. Instead of human nature is in us, instead of wanting to better ourselves, we choose to hate. We choose to devour and tear down. That is the disconnection. Read that again, verse 7 again.
Verse 7, if thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted?
If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? The light dwells in each and every one of us.
That's right.
Christ dwells in each and every one of us.
That's right.
If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? But read.
And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him.
Read.
And Cain talked with Abel his brother. And it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother, and slew him.
And did what?
And slew him.
Human nature. Human nature. It's a brute beast. Give me Galatians chapter 5, verse 19. Israel is truly time to humble our minds and change our hearts. Because by nature, we are evil. We err. Read this.
The book of Galatians, chapter 5 and verse 17. For the flesh lusteth against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary, the one to the other.
It starts with your mind. Read on up.
So that ye cannot do the things that ye would. But if ye be led of the Spirit, ye are not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance.
Hello. What? Hatred. Hatred. That's still Israel. We must understand that. Go back to Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 13, verse 1.
The book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 13 and verse 1. Surely they are all men by nature.
By nature, Israel, by nature, we are full of uncleanness, hatred, wrath, envyings, strife. It is in our nature. It is in our nature. So how can one lean on the flesh when the flesh will fail you? Right. How can we lean on the flesh, our own understanding, when our own understanding will fail us?
That's right.
For our own understanding is corrupt. How can we lean on our own understanding? And where has it gotten us? Where has it gotten us? Go back to Philippians chapter 2, verse 7. Start at verse 8. Philippians chapter 2, verse 8.
The book of Philippians chapter 2 and verse 8. And being found and fashioned as a man.
Christ, understanding that being found in fashion of a man. Read.
He humbled himself.
He did what?
He humbled himself.
It's time for us to humble ourselves.
That's right.
It's time for us to truly humble ourselves. Read.
And became obedient unto death.
And did what?
And became obedient unto death.
And how's that? Read on.
Even the death of the cross.
Even the what?
Even the death of the cross.
All he did was mortify his members, man. He mortified the flesh. Because fleshly ears profit us nothing. A fleshly heart profit us nothing. He mortified his members. Understand it, man, that flesh will fail us every time. Flesh will fail us every time. Go back to Genesis. Turn to verse 4. Down to verse 7.
Genesis chapter 4 and verse 7. If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted?
If any, we all have the choice to take hold of life. All God tells us to do is love our brother and be full of good works. But read.
And if thou doest not well, Sin lieth at the door.
But we rather choose not to do well. We rather choose not to walk after the Spirit. Read on.
And unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him.
And he shall do what?
And thou shalt rule over him.
And our thoughts, our fleshly thoughts have dominion over our bodies. Making ourselves to be servants to the flesh. Read on.
And Cain talked with Abel, his brother, and it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother, and slew him.
And did what?
And slew
and
him.
did what?
And slew
It's in
him.
our nature. It is in our nature. Israel. The only way to defeat death that's promised to this flesh, not just simply obeying the words. Give me John chapter 10, verse 27.
The book of John, chapter 10, and verse 27. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me, and I give unto them eternal life.
Read.
And they shall never perish.
Now they shall do what?
And they shall never perish.
Read.
Neither shall any man pluck them out of my hand.
Read on.
My Father, which gave them me, is greater than all, and no man is able to pluck them out of my Father's hand.
Read.
I and my Father are one.
Come back and want the source itself. They want the power himself. The source and the power itself. Give me 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 22.
The book of 1 Peter chapter 1 and verse 22. Seeing ye have purified your souls in obeying the truth through the Spirit, unto unfeigned love of the brethren. See that ye love one another with a pure heart, fervently.
Read.
Being born again.
All it is just to be, that's what it means, just to be born again. But we make it so hard. If this is what it takes to be born again, what is there to debate? What is there to argue? What is there to talk about? Read on.
Being born again, not of corruptible seed, but of incorruptible.
Read.
By the word of God, which liveth and abideth forever.
Read.
For our flesh is as grass.
What is this flesh that we live in?
For our flesh is as grass.
What is this flesh that we live in?
For our flesh is as grass.
This flesh is as grass. Read.
And of the glory of man, as the flower of grass. The grass wherein, and the flower thereof falleth away.
The grass withereth, and the flower thereof falleth away. Just like us in this flesh, which wither away. How can we lean on our own understanding when the flesh will fail us every time? We have no choice but to be obedient unto death. Read on.
But the word of the Lord endureth forever. And this, the word which by the gospel is preached unto you.
Which is what?
And this, the word which by the gospel is preached unto you.
Proverbs chapter 27, verse 20. Proverbs 27, verse 20.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 27 and verse 20. Hell and destruction are never full.
Read.
So the eyes of man are never satisfied.
Because the thing about this flesh, man, it'll never be satisfied. Can never have enough.
Bring it out.
How can we lean on our own understanding of this flesh when it is flawed? Read that again.
Verse 20. Hell and destruction are never full. So the eyes of man are never satisfied.
The eyes of man are never satisfied. Never can get enough. Continue to thirst. Continue to hunger. God, Christ, we have a chance. Give me Sirach chapter 10, verse 18. Matter of fact, give me 1 John chapter 3, verse 10. Read this out.
The book of 1 John, chapter 3 and verse 10. And this, the children of God are manifest, and the children of the devil. Whosoever doeth not righteousness is not of God, neither he that loveth not his brother.
Read.
For this is the message that ye heard from the beginning, that we should love one another.
Israel, we're just going to make it simple, man. That's all that's required of us. Read on.
Not as Cain, who was of that wicked one, and slew his brother.
You're either going to love or you're either going to hate. Very simple. He's going to be full of love or full of hate. Read.
And wherefore slew he him? Because of his own works were evil, and his brother's righteous. Marvel not, my brethren, if the world hate you.
Read on. Go down to verse 14.
Verse 14. We know that we have passed from death unto life.
We know that we are passed from the flesh into the spirit. Read on.
Because we love the brethren. He that loveth not his brother abideth in death.
So Israel, how must we walk? Where is the disconnection? Where are we going wrong as a nation?
Bring it out.
What is the problem? You know, God is a God of knowledge. By him, actions are weighed.
That's right.
By him, actions are weighed. Give me Sirach chapter 39, verse 19. You know, we tend to walk around as if it's either to hide our thoughts, deepest desires, our motives. But read this out.
The book of Sirach, chapter 39 and verse 19. The works of our flesh are before him.
But the works, our thoughts, are always and steady before him. That's one thing we must understand, Israel. Humble thyself, because that could be you. Squirming like a fish, fighting to breathe. That could be you. That could be you. Give me Sirach chapter 3, verse 18.
The book of Sirach, chapter 3 and verse 18. The greater thou art, the more humble thyself.
That's not what I want. That's not what I want. Hold on, let me see if I can get there with you. Not what I want. Give me Galatians chapter 6, verse 8.
The book of Galatians, chapter 6 and verse 8. Bring it out. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption.
Read on.
But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting.
Read.
And let us not be weary in well doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not.
For in due season we shall reap if we faint not. Give me Galatians chapter 5, verse 17.
The book of Galatians, chapter 5 and verse 17.
Start at verse 22.
Verse 22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love.
So
joy.
The thing is, make sure each day that we live and each day that we breathe in, that we devote our energy, our words to love. Read on out.
But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law.
Read.
And they that are Christ have crucified the flesh.
I did what?
Have crucified the flesh.
Man, I'm telling you. Understanding that this flesh profits nothing.
Right.
Again, you know, we throw the word death around until it come upon you. Till death get close. Try holding your breath and see how that flesh, and see what that flesh profits you in.
Bring it out.
Put a lighter to your hand and see what that flesh profits you in. At some point in this walk, we have to understand that this flesh is going to fail us eventually.
That's right.
That all we got truly to give is love.
That's right. Bring it out.
Truly and essentially, all a man or a woman of Christ has to give is just love. The problem is, Israel, we want to put on a persona. We want to put on the front. Some of us, we want to mask it. Not truly changing inwardly. Outwardly, some may seem as a spirit, but inwardly, still harboring fruits of the flesh. So the short lifetime that we got, go back to Philippians chapter 2, verse 7. Understand what's set before us. Truly understand what is truly set before us. Read that again.
The book of Philippians, chapter 2 and verse 7.
Read.
But made himself of no reputation.
But making under Christ understanding in his flesh, how the flesh profited him nothing, made himself of no reputation. Because he understood the flesh could not get him anywhere.
Right.
Read.
And took upon him the form of a servant.
He took upon him the form of a servant, just like we all ought to be. A servant to each other.
Right.
Read.
I was made in the likeness of man.
Understanding that he's in the likeness of man, a mortal man. We all know the curse on that mortal man. The death. We all know the curse put on that flesh. Again, we walk around living, and this is the nature of the human. A problem not a problem till it affects us.
That's why I get out.
You know, we don't sympathize, we don't show affection and empathy with the ones suffering and dying around the world. As long as we have what we need. But what would you do when that fire comes to consume your flesh?
Why get out?
And try your spirit.
That's right.
Read on up.
And being found in fashion as a man.
Understanding that he's in the flesh. Read.
He humbled himself.
He did what?
He humbled himself.
It's imperative that we humble ourselves. You know, some of us, we think too highly of ourselves in this flesh. We think too highly of ourselves. But again, as the scripture says, the flesh profiteth nothing but fire and worms. Go dig up somebody and look at where they at then. How the maggots crawling out their skull. Devouring at their flesh. What's the flesh profit of us nothing but the spirit that quickeneth. Give me Galatians chapter 6 verse 2. Galatians chapter 6 verse 2.
The book of Galatians chapter 6 and verse 2. Bear ye one another's burden, and so fulfill the law of Christ.
Oh, all Christ asks us to do is bear you one another's burdens.
That's right.
Fulfilling his law.
That's right.
But read on.
For if any man think himself to be something, when he is
But
nothing.
then the disconnection is, some of us begin to think of ourselves as highly than others.
Right.
But read.
He deceiveth himself.
And deceiveth thyself. Again, hold your breath and see what that flesh do as it squirm to breathe.
Bring it out.
Put that fire to your hand and watch your flesh disintegrate. The flesh truly profit us nothing. So how can we walk around so proud? Unless you look over and find yourself squirming, fighting for air.
That's right.
How ought we to truly walk? In Christ, he gives us the blueprint. He gives us the blueprint. Go back to Philippians chapter 2, verse 2. Philippians chapter 2, verse 2. He gives us the blueprint. But it's the flesh, the confusion, the pride that makes it so hard. Read this up.
The book of Philippians chapter 2 and verse 2. Fulfill ye my joy.
This is how you fulfill the joy of the power. Ain't it that this is that we are all searching for? When we breathe, when we wake up, what is it that we set out to do? And it's to fulfill the joy of God. Read.
That ye be like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. Let nothing be done through strife.
All we ask us to do is having the same love and being of one accord and one mind. But read on up.
Or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind. Let each esteem others better than themselves.
Let each esteem others better than themselves. Read on.
Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others.
Read.
Let this mind be in you, which is also in Christ.
Of Christ, all the power asks us to do is take on this mindset. Take on this mindset. And where do we go astray? And how we look at things, man. The disconnection is our mindset.
That's right.
That's it. The disconnection lies within our mind. It is our mindset. And it's Israel, we must change it. We must change it. For it be our flesh that's tried in that fire. Proving the type of works that we are. Read on up.
Who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation.
First thing you do to be obedient is don't make yourself of no reputation. Read on.
And took upon him the form of a servant.
Then you take upon yourself the form of a servant. Read.
And was made in the likeness of man, and being found in fashion as a man.
And understanding that we all have one interest in and one interest out. That is the Lord, it is the Lord that giveth, and it is the Lord that taketh away. Understanding this, read.
He humbled himself.
You should humble yourself. Because everything is the Lord's will.
That's right.
The good, the bad, the ugly in our lives, our daily lives, is the Lord's will. Therefore, humble yourself. Because death is all around. Death is all around. Again, sitting there feeding my baby girl chips. In a split second, she was choking gas from air. If I hadn't been there, she would have died.
That's right.
That's how quick death can come. All it takes is one mistake, one split second, one wrong decision. Read on.
And became obedient unto death.
You got to become obedient because you never know when it's your time.
Right.
You never know when it's your time. And to make it out, to defeat death, all he asks you to do is be like-minded and have the same love towards one another.
Right.
So why do we debate as a nation? Where is the derision? Where is the division? Because the nation, we fail to find Christ. Christ will forever remain a stumbling block. And what fulfills the law of Christ? Just bearing the burden of your brother and your sister. That's all he asks. That's all he asks us to do. But read.
Even the death of the cross.
Read.
Wherefore God also hath highly exalted him, and given him a name which is above every name.
Read.
That at the name of Christ every knee shall bow, of the things in heaven, and the things in earth, and the things under the earth, and that every tongue shall confess that Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Wherefore, my beloved, as ye have always obeyed, not as in my presence only.
Don't just do it in the sight of man.
Bring it out.
Don't just do it while you're at church.
Bring it out.
Because this is not the time death gonna come. This is not the time you're gonna be tried.
Right.
Read.
But now, much more in my absence.
We're not much more about what?
In my absence.
It's what you're doing when nobody out there watching.
Bring it out.
It's what you're doing when nobody out there watching. Because death can be made manifest in a split second. Read.
Work out your own salvation.
You better be working out your own salvation.
Right.
Showing your own self a pattern of good works. Read.
Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling.
With what?
With fear and trembling.
With fear and trembling. Because our God is a consuming fire and not a respecter of persons.
That's right.
Anybody ever driving down the road, you ever seen an 18-wheeler hit a car head on? Somebody's leg on the other side of the highway. Better be working out your own salvation with fear and trembling. Because truly the flesh profits you nothing but fire and worms. But fire and worms. They put you in that ground. The moment they put you in that ground, the maggots come eating you alive. Is this what you live for, this flesh? Or do you truly believe a true love for your brother, true love for your sister, and perfect fear of God? True love worketh no ill will. If you got any ill will, man, you better bethink yourself. Any envy, any strife, you better bethink yourself. Because Christ, he give us the blueprint. Read on.
For it is God which worketh in you both.
It is God which worketh in us both. Read.
To will and to do of his good pleasure. Do all things without murmuring and disputing.
Do all things without murmurings and disputings. Right. Everything in life is the Lord's will.
That's right.
So you murmur against what his will is? Do you murmur against the things that he brought upon you? Yeah. You're going to dispute the Lord's will, the things that he brought upon you? Understanding each and everything we go through is the Lord's will.
That's right.
Everything. Everything. Read.
That ye may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation.
In the midst of a crooked and perverse generation. Read on, not.
Among whom ye shine as lights in the world, holding forth the word of life, that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, that I have not run in vain.
That I have not what?
Run in vain.
Read.
Neither labored in vain.
Read.
Yea, if I be offered upon the
That's all I want on that. Give me James chapter 3, verse 1. James chapter 3, verse 1. Coming to an end here, Israel. Coming to an end. James chapter 3, verse 1.
The book of James, chapter 3 and verse 1. My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation.
Take into consideration the things you feed yourself, the things you profess, the things you say. Right. That you receive the greater condemnation. Read.
For in many things we offend all.
For in many things we offend all, but read.
If any man offer not in word.
But if any man offend not in word, read.
The same is a perfect
The
man.
same is a what?
Is a perfect
The
man.
same is a what?
Is a perfect man.
The same is a what?
Is a perfect man.
Give me Ecclesiasticus 37:18. There's only 4 things that set before us, Israel. Only 4 things that set before us. Ecclesiasticus 37:18.
The book of Sirach, chapter 37 and verse 18. 4 manner of things appear.
There's only 4 manner of things that appear before our eyes, Israel. Read.
Good and evil.
It's only good and evil. Read.
Life and death.
It's only life and death. Good and evil, life and death. Read.
But the tongue ruleth over them continually.
It is your tongue that ruleth over them continually. It is your tongue. It is the words that we speak. Make sure we speak in life while we have breath.
That's right.
Make sure we speak in love and life to our brother and our sister while we have breath.
That's right.
Because if you continue to glory in that flesh, the only thing that flesh will profit you is fire and maggot worms.
That's right.
As soon as they lower your body into that ground, worms begin to devour it.
Bring it out.
So how can we walk after it? Again, Israel, let's take on the spirit of Christ and be obedient unto the spirit to death. And what are the fruits of the spirit? Give me Galatians chapter 5, verse 17, and we out. So to verse 22. Galatians 5 and 22, and we out.
The book of Galatians, chapter 5 and verse 22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace.
Just walk around with joy, love, peace. Read.
Long suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law.
Since such there is no law. Read.
And they that are Christ have crucified the flesh with the affections and lust.
Read.
If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit.
We live in the Spirit. Let us also walk after the Spirit. Read.
Let us not be desirous of vain glory, provoking
stop right
one
there.
another.
Stop right there. But let us not be desirous of vain glory. Majority of us, we want to lake of fire because we want to be seen of men.
That's right. Bring it out.
We all want to be seen. Look what has plagued our nation. Everybody on the phone wants to be seen.
Bring it out.
Everybody want to be seen. Let us not be the buyers of vainglory. Read.
Provoking one another.
And what does that do? Provoke one another. Now you got the spirit of competition. Now you got the spirit of envy, the spirit of hate, jealousy. Read.
Envying one
And
another.
it causes us to not, lastly, envy one another. And as the scripture says, through envy of the devil, that's how death came into the world. Hope this is a good practice before the main course. All praise to the Most High and His Son. Shalom.